So welcome to Optimizing Your Immune System at Home. This is a guide by Dr. John Connor. He is a chiropractor with Corrective Chiropractic out of Horsham, PA, and we thank him for being here today. I know I'm interested in hearing how I can improve my immune system, and I am guessing a lot of you are as well. Once again, if you just joined, you are muted. And please ask your questions in the chat box. You can find that on the control panel at the bottom of your screen. You may have to point there and hover your cursor for the control panel to pop out. And then find your chat, and you can double click on it. So I will ask questions at the end on your behalf. And with that, one other thing I want to mention, if you want to just see the PowerPoint presentation, you can click at the top of your video screen and hide thumbnail view where the webcams are at the top. Click hide thumbnail view. It's the first line to get the webcam out of the way. So with that, I want to pass it to Dr. John. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank Margaret and Susan for this opportunity to be here today. One of the things about being a doctor is a doctor also means being a teacher. So I love these opportunities to get out in front of people and teach on topics that I'm passionate about, and to help people better their health. You know, we all have our unique talents and gifts and stuff that we're just naturally passionate about. And health is one of mine. And so I have different, presentations on health-related topics. Some can be found on my YouTube channel. If you just if you're on YouTube, it's John. If you put in John Connor Chiropractic, you should see me coming up. I mean, I know John Connor is a pretty common name, and also you'll probably get a lot of Terminator stuff that comes up. But if you didn't put in John Connor Chiropractic, you should see my some of my other presentations, as well as I'm part of a group with some massage therapists, and it's called the Health and Wealth Revolution. And they also have their own YouTube channel where they've recorded a couple of my presentations as well. So you can find other presentations there. But anyway, so when I was asked to put something together, something that's timely, something that we could do in about 30 minutes time. So I figured, hey, let's talk about optimizing your immune system at home. And this one specifically, there are many factors involved with that, but this one's going to kind of focus just on nutrition, which again, I'm just huge, very passionate about that. So again, there's many factors involved in your immune system, but especially right now, because what's going around right now, it's a virus, right? So there really isn't a cure per se for a virus. It's not like a bacteria, which there's antibiotics. This is a virus, and what's always been the best defense against viruses, and that's your own immune system, right? So you have these natural defenses. You are not defenseless. So it's about finding ways where you can really optimize your immune system, because the immune system is actually quite amazing, and it's like that would be a whole presentation in and of itself. But anyway, so let's get rolling. I got a lot of information I want to get through, and I do want to respect your time and also allow some time at the end for some questions. So go through this. I'm gonna hide this. All right. Going through my presentation here. So who am I? Again, I'm a doctor of chiropractic, so after my name, I have a DC. So instead of an MD, it's a DC. And so a lot of people, they don't really know what a chiropractor is, or is it, where you can get a certification in, online or, 6-month school. It was actually, it was a 4-year school. I had all the anatomy and physiology and cadaver labs. Like the first 2 years are basically just like med school. It's just where they start going into diagnosis of disease and pharmacology. we get into nutrition and then hands-on, chiropractic adjustments and things like that. So a lot of people think that chiropractic is just neck or back pain, when that's actually, that's not true. I don't know how that got started. I think if you've ever noticed like commercials about different medications, and there's this huge list of side effects. Well, chiropractic adjustments, the side effect is that people's neck and back pain get better, or they get relief. So I think that's how it started, but that's not chiropractic's aim. The word chiropractic itself does mean done by hand. And the first chiropractic adjustment was in 1895, and it restored a man's hearing. And that's how chiropractic came into existence. And interestingly enough, chiropractic has a history during the 1918 flu pandemic that was much worse than what we're going through today. And the information is out there, you can read about it, but chiropractors were, treating people, and chiropractic had about 1/40th the death rate of those that were being treated traditionally. And again, there's not like there's a special adjustment for the flu. That's not what it's about. And we'll get into kind of a little bit about that. But again, it's because now we know there is this communication, or this, symbiosis between the nervous system and the immune system. So chiropractors are doctors of the nervous system. That's what we do. In a nutshell, we want to make sure that the communication between the brain and the body happens with the least amount of interference as possible. So physiology or anatomy 101 is that the nervous system is the master controlling system of the entire body. Okay, so my nervous system, my brain, my spinal cord, controls all the other systems of the body, including the immune system. And so if that's the case, then I want to make sure that my nervous system is functioning properly. And that's what chiropractors do. But let's get on with this. I graduated from Life University, which was the largest chiropractic school in the world at the time, in 2000. I've been practicing since 2001. I'm married. Actually, tomorrow is my 20-year anniversary to my wife, and we have 2 children, ages 16 and 12. I'm passionate about all things health, and my practice specifically focuses on zone healing, which is the body's divided up into 6 different systems, and if there's an imbalance in one of those systems, then the body can't function properly. And so it's about finding out where that imbalance is and then bringing balance back to the body. Structural correction, meaning that just like you have normal blood pressure, you have normal body temperature, there is actually a normal shape to the spine. And so I'm able to kind of determine where each patient is, and then kind of compare them to where we know normal to be, and try to get their structure as close to normal as possible. And then upper cervical alignment, which means upper cervical means the top of the neck, because the bones are unique up there, and making sure that that alignment is where it should be. But anyway, moving on, there are 5 factors to health. So each one of these is important in its own, presentation in of itself. But there's one is proper nutrition. We're kind of get into that today. Proper exercise or movement, proper rest, recuperation, proper mindset, which again, how you think. So that's, again, a really fascinating thing. So like what's going on right now, you have to look for the positive instead of focusing on the negative all the time. So we know that stress is this thing in the nervous system that can come from different areas, but one can be our own mind. So for example, if you've ever had butterflies in your stomach or been so nervous that, you've felt like you were going to throw up, I mean, what is that? Is that a problem with your digestive system, or is that your mind creating that scenario? So I would say, when it comes to mindset, there's lots of great information out there. So I wouldn't, be paying attention to the news too much, because all news is all negative. I mean, that's just what sells. There's very, very little that's actually positive. So I wouldn't, constantly be looking at, all this stuff that's going around right now, and just really try to find, a lot of positive stuff out there. Interesting study, a very famous study that was done. Two groups of people, they were all told they needed knee surgery. And one group got a sham surgical intervention where they actually had an incision, but then it was sewed right back up. Nothing happened. And then the other group, which actually got the knee surgery. But they all thought they got knee surgery. Well, the group that had the sham surgery actually improved better than the group that had the surgery. So that was their mind that, that did that. So again, that's a whole nother presentation in itself. And then a proper functioning nervous system. And again, that's where chiropractic comes into play. That's where I, that's my kind of area of expertise. So these are the references. These are really good books to have. One is called Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon. Sally Fallon heads up the Weston A. Price Foundation. And Weston Price was a dentist in the early 20th century. And he literally traveled the globe to find out all about this relationship between dental stuff, cavities, dental deformities, and things like that, and nutrition. He actually wrote a book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, which is fascinating because we think of primitive cultures kind of being less than what we are, but in areas they weren't. They didn't suffer from a lot of the degenerative diseases that we have today. The next book's called The Maker's Diet by Jordan Rubin. You may have heard of him. He's written several books, but he actually cured himself of Crohn's disease, which they say there is no cure. The next one, Eat to Beat Disease by William Lee. That's a more recent book. And that's a great one to have. I know that he was on Rachel Ray recently. And then the last one's The Circadian Code by Sachin Panda. I'm gonna get into some of that too. That is just fascinating, fascinating stuff. But what I like about these is they're not really, they're not telling you a specific diet to eat. They're not even saying you need to exclude all this stuff. It's really just looking at making healthy choices, and not only what you eat, but when you eat, which is really important. There's also some great documentaries on Prime Video. If you have Amazon, if anyone has Amazon Prime, there's Amazon Prime Video. One is called Fasting, which it was fascinating. It was great. There's another one that's called Food is Medicine. That's pretty good. And there's also one called The Gut, the Second Brain. And, that was really interesting because now we know that, you have more neurons in your gut than a cat has in its entire brain. So that's when they talk about you have a gut feeling, or again, if you've had butterflies or in your stomach, again, there's this connection via what's called the vagus nerve. There's this connection between your gut and your brain. And they're learning more and more about this and how gut health actually affects brain health, and vice versa. So fascinating, fascinating stuff. There's also some great TED Talks on YouTube. There's a lot of great information out there. I would highly recommend you check out Rhonda Patrick. Dr. Rhonda Patrick, she's a longevity researcher, and she has her own YouTube channel called Found My Fitness, where she interviews a lot of these doctors and a lot of these longevity researchers and all this stuff on all these health topics. So she also has another channel called FMF Clips. So what she's done is sometimes these interviews are 2 hours long. So, I mean, it's hard to sit there for 2 hours, watching an interview, but if you really want to get down to, so there's just certain pieces. So in that second channel called FMM Clips, she's taken just, say 5 or 10 minute or 20-minute segments and then labeled, here's where you can go for this, information. So you can find what you're looking for quickly and not have to sit through a 2-hour, interview. But anyway, and then before we move on, just a talk about a topic that's called epigenetics. And this came to relevance in about 2010. It was a cover of Time magazine. But basically what epigenetics means is that your genes are not your destiny. A lot of people think, well, it's in my genes to be diabetic. It's in my genes to be, you know, whatever the, you know, diagnosis is, when they've learned that that's actually not the case. You can alter the expression of your genes. It's like an on-off switch via your environment, which means another way is your lifestyle choices. So you are not a slave, you know, to your genes. You can actually alter their expression. So you may have a gene for a certain disorder. It will never, ever express itself because of the healthy choices that you make. So that's very freeing and very powerful to know that. So, you know, you've heard of you are what you eat. It's actually a bit more than that. You are what you eat, how you move, what you think, how you rest, and how well your nervous system is functioning. Okay, so let's get into some basic guidelines. And you've probably all heard this stuff before, but you know, you want to choose really healthy sources of meat. The better the animal was raised, the better and healthier their meat is going to be for you. And I know maybe some people, you know, don't choose to eat meat. Some people are vegetarian, or for some reason, people think vegetarianism is healthier. And that's just not the case. There's a big difference between, say, fast food burger and a grass-fed, you know, ground beef. There's a huge difference. And so again, I like going to what does our anthropology say? You know, what did our ancestors do? And you're not going to find any ancient civilization that was vegetarian. I'm not saying you can't do it, but I'm just saying there was no civilization on Earth that was ever vegetarian. So it's about finding, you know, really healthy sources of meat. Naturally fermented raw dairy products instead of the antibiotic-laced, hormone-enhanced, and pesticide-tainted pasteurized and homogenized dairy products. In Pennsylvania, we actually can still get raw milk. You kind of have to find different sources, but do not think because it's raw, it is somehow going to make you sick. That's just, it's not true. But anyway, at least the best you can do is find stuff that's unhomogenized, you know, that has the cream at the top. Wild fish and seafood instead of the farm-raised varieties. Farm-raised fish is going to be higher in omega-6 fatty acids, which are pro-inflammatory, which again cause inflammation in the body, whereas your wild-caught stuff and stuff that's lower on the food chain will have less heavy metals. So, for example, a swordfish is going to be really high because it's higher in the food chain, whereas something like a mackerel is going to be lower in the food chain and therefore lower in heavy metals. Seek out nutritious fermented or sprouted whole grain bread instead of the commercially produced white bread that can't even sustain insect life. So I really like the Ezekiel products by Foods for Life, and you can find them in the freezer section. But that is sprouted grain bread. And what happens when you sprout things is in all grains, you have what's called phytates or phytic acid, and that it blocks mineral absorption in the gut. So you need to find a way to be able to break that down. And so when you sprout the grains, that's exactly what happens. And so they've done that for you. And so you can buy, you know, different breads and bagels and tortilla shells and, you know, English muffins and things like that. Feed your microbiome. Microbiome is your gut bacteria. You actually have more bacteria than you do actually cells in your body. It's amazing. We're actually more bacterial DNA than we are even human DNA, which is mind-blowing. But anyway, your gut microbiome is this diversity of microbes in your gut that actually, you know, not only help you digest foods, but they do a lot of things to protect you from viruses and fungi, and that's why if you take an antibiotic, you sterilize yourself. You're not only killing the bad bacteria, but you're killing the good as well. And that's why it's not uncommon after taking an antibiotic that you can have other secondary infections, like yeast infections and things like this, because normally those things are kept in check. Our healthy bacteria keep the unhealthy ones at bay. So it's all about balance. But when we take an antibiotic, it throws that completely off. And it can take a long time to rebuild your gut microbiome. So be very careful and don't just take an antibiotic at the drop of a hat. You really want to try to avoid that at all possible. I understand sometimes it's necessary, but we don't want to take it as often as it seems to be, have been done in our country's history. But you want to feed your microbiome with fermented foods and drinks, such as raw sauerkraut, drinks like kombucha, things like this that are really going to help, that bacteria thrive in our gut. Use grass-fed butter, raw grass-fed cheese, coconut oil, and olive oil versus, trans fats and rancid vegetable oils. So, really our ancestors knew nothing of these, canola and, Crisco and all things like that. But they did understand olive oil and, coconuts and things like this. So those are, our physiology hasn't changed, but our food has changed dramatically, even in the last 50 to 100 years. So, our bodies are designed for these, just the bottom line is close to nature as possible. The more man gets his hands on it, the bad it's going to be. So if you stick to all the perishable foods, which are in the perimeter of the grocery store, the better off you're going to be, and avoid all the, boxed and canned stuff as much as possible. Obviously, organic fruits and veggies. When it comes to organic versus non-organic, I would say a good rule of thumb is something that's thin-skinned versus something that's thick-skinned. So thin-skinned, like berries, grapes, things like this, pesticides can easily you get into those, versus say something like a pineapple or a avocado. They have such a thick skin, it doesn't, matter as much. So that's how you can kind of pick and choose as far as, where, to save money versus not. But some people I've heard said, wow, eating healthy is expensive. And I would say, well, being sick is more expensive. How much is cancer going to cost you? How much is, just being sick, having to take medications, go to doctor's appointments, be in a hospital, have a surgical intervention? That stuff's expensive. Being away from family or away from work, that's what's expensive. So, I look at this as an investment. And it's made a dramatic change in my life personally. I've been kind of refining things over the years, and it's made a dramatic difference. This is out of William Lee's book, Eat to Beat Disease. And again, another thing I like about his book is that it's not it doesn't exclude things, or it's not like this restrictive diet saying you only need to eat, these things. It's not about that. It's about, again, making healthy choices. And all his information is based on stuff that it's been proven in the lab. So this is what he found: key foods affecting the immune system. And again, certain foods are immune boosting and other foods are immune calming, because, a lot of people could use immune boosting, but there are some people, if you've heard of autoimmune disorders, that's where they almost have like an overactive immune system. And so there are certain foods that actually help to calm that down. And again, it's about balance. So it's not like choosing one over the other. He just recommends you find foods out of all this huge list in different categories of how they help your body, and then just choosing some of those every day. And then it adds up over time. So you can see here, garlic, raspberries, blackberries, blueberries. The thing about berries is they have so much nutrition and antioxidants and are really low in sugar. So that's a good thing. Broccoli, sprouts, a lot of mushrooms on here, which is interesting. But anyway, you can read the list, and you see over the immune calming stuff, it's a lot of vitamin C stuff. So again, just all healthy fruits, vegetables, mushrooms, spices, olive oil. Okay, so here we get into a major problem. 200 years ago, the average American consumed about 10 pounds of sugar per year. Today, it's about 170 pounds or more. The US leads the world in obesity. Diabetes is a major ongoing problem, and both are linked to excess sugar consumption. Sugar suppresses the immune system and feeds cancer. Actually, that's how they find cancer in the body. They inject a sugar solution and then they do a scan. And because cancer cells, they need sugar to survive. So they suck up the sugar, and then that's how they find it on the scan where the cancer cells are. So that's, I know, one of the ways to beat cancer is to actually starve it. And so they've found some positive results, people going on, like, say, ketogenic diet. But anyway, so sugar is just, again, suppresses the immune system. So in times, especially like this, where we want our bodies as adaptable as possible, because I may come in contact with the virus, I may not, but the idea is I want my body primed to be able to adapt to that and to withstand it and be able to overcome it. And so we notice that, the trend is people that are really old or people that have other problems like diabetes and obesity seem to be the ones that are getting hit the hardest with this. And again, why would that be? Because their immune systems are already compromised. So the idea is to have your own immune system be able to be very competent and adaptable. Beware of artificial sweeteners, which are neurotoxins, so like aspartame and things of that nature. Sugar shortens telomeres. Your telomeres are, they're a genetic marker of aging. So they're like the end caps of your DNA. So they're like your shoelaces. On the end of your shoelace, you have that little plastic thing. Well, that's kind of like what a telomere is. And it's the longest when you're, born or young, and then it gradually gets shorter over time. But they found certain lifestyle factors will actually lengthen or shorten your telomeres. So sugar is something that does shorten your telomeres, which means it's going to age you faster. So soda and sugar sweetened beverages cause telomere shortening. Daily soda consumption was associated with up to a 4.6 years of additional aging, an amount comparable to smoking. So shorter telomeres is also a marker for higher cardiac risk, and we all know sugar is addictive. So we really have to cut that habit. Another thing that helps strengthen the immune system is vitamin D, and the best source is from the sun. Vitamin D is more than just a vitamin. It's a steroid hormone that controls the expression of over 1,000 different genes. Your body produces vitamin D in exposure to sunlight. There's a sweet spot between 40 and 60 nanograms per milliliter, which obviously you'd have to get through a blood test, but most people can take probably somewhere in the range of 4,000 or so IUs a day safely. And obviously, if you're going to take an oral supplement, vitamin D3 is superior to vitamin D2. Factors affecting vitamin D production, obviously sunscreen, skin pigmentation, your age, and body fat, because vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. But actually, the darker skin tone someone is, the more they can withstand the sun, but it's harder. They need more in order to make vitamin D, whereas someone like myself, a lighter skin tone, I can get more sunlight, like I can get sunlight and make more vitamin D easier, but I have to watch. I can't withstand the sun as long, or else I'm going to burn. Vitamin D research, again, being the lowest vitamin D means, again, extra aging on shorter telomeres, and recent studies showed that those who had higher vitamin D levels had increased, lifespan. So vitamin D is a big deal. Some people even think that the flu is just nothing more than a vitamin D kind of deficiency. So especially during the colder, darker months, fall, winter, we're not getting enough sunlight, then we really need to supplement with vitamin D. Diets don't work, lifestyle does. So that's what they've learned over the years. Calorie restriction is just too brutal. You know, they have shown that calorie restriction does increase lifespan in animals. But again, the problem with diets is they're too restrictive. And the whole thing is, if you can't stick with it, it doesn't matter. That's why people on diets usually, they yo-yo back and forth. And versus when you make a lifestyle change, it's a habit, and that's where success comes from. So intermittent fasting offers the benefits of calorie restriction, but without the pain. So there's a couple different types of fasting. There's what's called time-restricted eating, which means all your meals are eaten in an 8 to 12-hour window. And then there's intermittent fasting, which is like, say, a very popular one is where 2 non-consecutive days a week, you're actually fasting. And then there's periodic fasting, which is, you know, fasting for at least 4 consecutive days, done, say, once a month or a few times a year. And that's typically done under, you know, supervision. But there's some really, really interesting stuff that's been coming out recently on fasting. Dr. Walter Longo out of USC, he noticed that when you take a person, you fast them, after 24 hours, everything is revolutionized. And even a cocktail of drugs, very potent ones, don't ever come close to what fasting does. And the beauty of fasting is it's all coordinated. So it's free. Like, there's all these things, like we're looking for this magic supplement, or, you know, these restrictive diets and things like this, but actually our body's kind of programmed to fast. It's been all throughout our history. And fasting is free. So it's not only a way to improve your health, but it's actually can, you're not spending as much money on food. So the problem is that, you know, in our history, we used to regularly fast, whether it be we didn't have access to food, or, you know, even in the 1970s, people ate 3 meals a day and then that was it. You know, breakfast, lunch, dinner, typically from like 7 to 7, and that was it. And what happened after that was like the snacking industry. And so now people just eat all day long. And that's where the problem comes in. We're never giving our digestive system a break. And then it really becomes a problem when you're eating later in the day.
I just wanted to mention the time.
Yes.
We're just past 12:30 here, so I want to make sure people had a chance to ask some questions. And if there's any last notes you want to make to us before we wrap it up here.
Yeah, I will. I apologize. I had done this in my head earlier and was able to get through stuff. But in any way, there's some more stuff through here on this, what's called the circadian code. But anyway, the bottom line is, to really sum it up, is what, you know, when you eat is just as important as what. So it's about making healthy choices. It doesn't have to be really restrictive or some like crazy diet, but also pay attention to, because the studies they've done shown that, you know, if you can restrict your eating window to a maximum of 12 hours, you know, anywhere between 8, 10 to 12 hours max. So when you get up in the morning, you know, say 7 o'clock in the morning is your first meal, you want to shut it down by 7 p.m. because eating late at night, your body is trying to get ready for sleep, and it's producing a hormone called melatonin, which helps you sleep. So you can get that restorative sleep, which is, again, important for our immune system. But if you've eaten, you're producing insulin. Insulin interferes with melatonin. So now your body is worrying about digestive food instead of doing its homework at night like it wants to do. So that can disrupt your sleep, but also causes problems with weight gain and all these other problems. So, you know, what they found is, instead of worrying about what kind of diet I need to be on, it's just restrict. You can really eat a lot of different foods, but if you restrict it between, you know, an 8 to 12 hour window, you can get away with a lot. And that's exactly what they found in the studies they did on mice. And so it was really, when you eat is just as important as what you eat. So, you know, timing is everything. So again, it's about balance. I hope you enjoyed this stuff. So a lot of people ask me about, supplements that I take. Are there any supplements that you take? I'll leave you with this. This is one that I take. It's an all-in-one supplement. So it really simplified my life. And you always wonder, is it really doing anything? And so I actually got tested, and the antioxidant levels in my skin were extremely, extremely high. So that made me, really glad knowing that, this was the only change I had made, besides, healthy eating and whatnot. But, so this is a great product. It's called Intramax. It's from Drucker Labs. It's druckerlabs.com. The code, if you wanted to order this yourself, you'll see it there, CON8612. And then you put in that code PERK1, you get free shipping. And again, this is the supplement that I take myself personally, my wife, and my kids take the kids' product. And that's kind of like our, little insurance policy.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been super helpful. If anyone has questions, feel free to type them in now, and I will ask on your behalf. For those of you who need to hop off, because it's after 12:30. Thank you for attending. Yes, it's lots of great information. I know that I love the recommendation about the fruits and vegetables, the thin versus thick skin.
Yep.
If you're trying to decide where to spend your money on the organic produce, go for the thin skin, correct? Fabulous.
Yep.
And I'm going to be getting some new vitamins soon. So I don't see any questions coming in. I'm just being conscious of everybody's time. If any questions come up after, just send them in to us at MEA, and we'll make sure to get them to Dr. John, or you have his information right here on the screen. And with that, I want to thank you for once again. And I want to mention that we will put the recording up on our YouTube channel. When you're getting lots of thank yous, this was awesome. Love the webinar, fabulous. Yes, so you can share this with your daughter. Once we put it on our YouTube channel, you can go to MEA's YouTube channel to watch. And thank you everybody for attending, and thank you again, Dr. John.
That was my pleasure. Again, a lot of information. I apologize. I start getting going and I can lose my train of thought. I went through this myself on my own, and I was able to get through it in the time, but I just found myself going off on a little tangent there. So I apologize, but I think I got the main points through.
Lots of good information. We appreciate your passion. So thanks a lot.
Absolutely. My pleasure. My pleasure.